Hello, and welcome to episode number 10 of the AwesomeAlgo podcast. We're nearing the end of 2022, and we still have a few guests on our agenda. Before we dive into this topic, I wanted to make a short announcement that there's a new platform available for the AwesomeAlgo, available at ask.awesomealgo.com. And essentially, it's a platform where any listener, if you're a listener of this podcast, you can come in there, use your Algorand Para wallet and authenticate to ask a question for free. You have one question and one vote per question available before the upcoming episode starts, and this is your best choice to essentially get one of your questions propagated and be picked to be asked to the guests. The voting happens, and essentially after voting, top 3 questions are going to be picked. And in fact, there's a few questions that we actually gathered in a couple of days. This only launched 2 days ago, so we have a few questions for Kieran from the community that we will run down at the very end of the episode. And with that, let's proceed to episode number 10. Our today's guest is Kieran Nelson. He's one of the co-founders of Algorand. The topic of the episode is building an aggregation portfolio tracker with multi-protocol compatibility on Algorand. So we're going to be talking about portfolio trackers on Algorand, and Kieran has a very interesting background lasting for over a decade in software engineering and software development. So I'm sure he's going to be a wonderful guest. And without further ado, I did my due diligence by investigating the platform and getting a bit familiar with the latest V2 version of it. So ready for the episode, Kieran? And the stage is yours. Why don't you introduce yourself and maybe provide a brief overview of, let's say, your academic background and decision-making behind choosing the field of engineering?
Yeah, no problem. So I'm Kieran. I'm one of the co-founders at Algo. I got into software development, it feels like a lifetime ago. 2009 is when I went to university. I went to University of the West of Scotland here in Scotland, over in Paisley, next to my house. I decided to go into software engineering. This is going to sound silly, on a bit of a whim. I was in dead-end jobs, didn't really enjoy things, was working at a call center at the time. If anyone remembers swine flu, I was on the call center for swine flu in the UK. And I was bored, and it was clearing time for the universities. So I went on the website, saw that you could do computer games technology. I was a big gamer back in the day, so I'd always liked stuff like that. I thought, hey, that sounds good. Phoned them up and said, can I get in with my medium grades? And they said, oh yeah, fantastic, come on down. UWS, University of West Scotland, not the most prestigious of universities in the UK, and especially in Scotland. We've got plenty of prestigious universities. This is not one. But it was very much a university that was targeted toward get degree, get job, have career. So that kind of spoke to me. I wasn't really the most academic of people. Mm-hmm. Certainly when I was doing my honours year, my 4th year, I did not enjoy having to write like a 70,000 word report. It wasn't great. But didn't enjoy it that much. So computer games got me into programming. Started off doing our main language was C++, because this was back in OpenGL 2 and OpenGL 3 had only just been released.
I think it's a great first language to start with.
Oh yeah,
a lot of knowledge about how things work under the hood.
I think it just teaches you to be to understand what's happening in the background and you don't have to understand the whole thing, because I certainly don't, but means that you know that it's not as simple as it looks in a high level language. So C++ with OpenGL, some 3D stuff. Did a little bit of Java as well, because they wanted to introduce us to like a very much object-oriented first language. And yeah, went from there, got my first jobs in the games industry during university, did some internships, made mobile games for a couple of years over in Dundee. which was again still C++, but you had your wrapper layers in Java for Android and or Objective C as it was at the time, for Apple devices. So it was fun to actually work in the mobile industry at that point because you get to see things as they went. When I started, the iPad 3 was new. So that was a whole new concept, the big screens and stuff. And it still was the problem of having to port things. One of my first actual real industry job was porting an iOS game to Android and Kindle, which
And
was
Kindle. Okay, so it's not a heavy 3D. Like that game was not heavy on 3D graphics.
Oh no! It was a words. Okay. It was like a Words with Friend derivative.
Okay.
Classic mobile game studio. That was the kind of puzzly games that we made. So that was a year of my life spent, and that's how I learned how to debug things properly because I didn't have a proper IDE, didn't have IntelliSense, didn't have a debugger. I just had console, the code, and printf, pretty much.
Well, some say sometimes all you need is Vim, but
yeah. So that was that. I eventually moved back to Glasgow and got a job in software consultancy, digital transformation stuff, which I did for about 6 years. Eventually becoming a software engineering manager or leading a department of software engineers. So I went a lot more down the management route. I recently started a new job where I'm lead developer, but it's very much the same thing. It's very much managing the team of developers and making sure they work correctly. So for a good couple of years, I wasn't really doing much development at all. And I got into Web3 stuff and Algorand specifically only September 2021. Because we, what was I doing? Yeah, I'd always heard about crypto and Bitcoin and all that kind of stuff, but I'd never really got into it. I'd bought some Bitcoin and some Ethereum and then sold it immediately because I was like, oh no, like a year before. Wish I'd kept it. And so I decided to have a look at different Web3 stuff, different cryptocurrencies. I'd looked at Cosmos, I'd looked at Cardano, I looked at Ethereum,
what were the main things you were assessing when you were looking into those chains?
Honestly,
was it consensus or?
No, not really, because I was still kind of wrapping my head around how a blockchain works, but I was just looking at the tech side of things. So when I looked at Algorand, all of the boxes were kind of ticked because it seemed like it's really fast finality. It's very low fees. It's fast and it's open and it works and it's new. I like to get in on things when they're relatively new. I know Algorand had probably been around for 2 or 3 years by that point, but to me it was new. And relatively in crypto, certainly wasn't Ethereum numbers or anything like that. Ethereum seemed like just the strangest thing. I couldn't understand gas fees. And the other ones, I looked at Polkadot, couldn't understand it. Honestly, I swear down, I'm a software engineer like 10 years, couldn't actually understand Polkadot. So past that one. Cosmos seemed very cool, but again, very much, the cross-chain stuff. I wanted something a bit simpler. And Algorand just seemed like the best tech around, and it was a nice, simple proposition. The consensus algorithm, nice and simple. It's, using proper randomness, pick people in the consensus and get them to vote. I did take on I jumped on and got someone at work to pay for my Coursera subscription and did a couple of blockchain related courses there. So like a whole piece on DeFi, especially with Algogator, because we were, I know I'm jumping ahead, because we have to know about DeFi, how it works. So I did a course on all the different things in DeFi, how it works, where it came from, all that kind of good stuff. So yeah, Web3 for me, I was into other tokens and stuff. I think I'd sold them all within a month and just stuck with Algorand and started to get involved in a little bit more of the community. This was back when it was just Yieldly at the time. And everyone was very excited.
Remember the days, yeah.
Yeah, and everyone was very excited because Tiny Man was coming. No more. I didn't have to go to MEXC anymore to swap my USDT to Yieldly and then transfer it back and get stung with it needs to be at least $30 or something like that. Oh, God, must be an easier way. And then there was. So I was very excited to kind of be there at the start of things and see how things were coming along.
And I mean, it's still pretty much very early days, right? It's on the scale of things, a year, of course, is extremely oversaturated in crypto, but on a grander scheme of things, the path to friendship with regulators, governments, and having big adoption, where you have grandma pulling up iPhones and sending algos to each other, or paying it for utility bills or whatever, is a long, very complicated path, and we'll see. But on the tech side, things for sure, and some things from the organizational side are shaping up in the ecosystem. So excited to see what's going to be new in the coming year. But with that set aside, I think it was a great brief overview of your biography and your journey that you made into Algorand. But before we dive into the main topic of the episode, which is Algogator, any chance you could also maybe set the stage a little bit for the main terminology on what is a portfolio tracker, basically? What is an aggregation portfolio tracker in the context of Web3 domain, let's say?
Yeah. So I think this comes back to why we started it in the first place. So even with Algorand, in a couple of months, you had Yieldly, and then you had Tinyman, and then you had, I can't remember what was next. Was it AlgoFi next? There's a couple more that came out afterwards. The portfolio aggregation is just to really look at the landscape of DeFi within a blockchain, any blockchain, because users can have they have their native tokens, they have lots of other tokens in their wallets, but one of the main features of blockchains with smart contracts is smart contracts, where you can lock tokens in. And a lot of smart contracts work off of that concept anyway, where tokens get sent to a contract, they're held for a specific length of time, or they're swapped for something else, etc. So when you do that, they're not in the wallet anymore, and you have to go manually find out where things are and pull them back. So the aggregation is to make it simple for people to see all of their net worth, all of their worth in that blockchain at a glance, and be able to drill down into it. Because when we were doing our initial kind of market research, I suppose you would call it, reaching out to people, asking them, how do you track your tokens in DeFi right now? And I swear to God, honestly, some people were using pen and paper to actually track a lot of people use spreadsheets, but some people were actually using pen and paper and updating it daily in a little book. So we thought there was definitely a place where aggregation had to come into it. And in addition to DeFi, there's also the NFT world, which I'm a big supporter of. Love a bit of NFTs. And that, especially back when we started, there wasn't a huge amount of standards, and there wasn't a huge amount of places to view your NFTs. I remember buying one.
When was that? Sorry, when was the the very early days of the Algogator? If you could recap the months.
Yeah, it was. I'll give you the how we met story. The Garrett, who is the CTO and co-founder as well, he put a message out on Reddit. I think I've shared it on Twitter from us before. That just said, we're designing a portfolio tracking app. Do you think that's a good idea? That kind of thing. And I responded back and said, yeah, obviously. There's only 2 dApps at the moment, but I still can't be bothered to go to 2 different places and my wallet to count things up. And I sent him a message. I just casually thought, I was in this room and I was just on my phone. I thought, I'll just send him a message. Just say, yeah, I'm a developer too. If you need a bit of help or even just another pair of eyes, let me know. And we got chatting, and I joined the Discord with him and Paco, who was the other co-founder who's since left. He was doing the design. And we got chatting about what we wanted to do. And that was the start of it. So we met at the start of October, and the first version of Algogator went live on the 28th of November. 2021. So we're just over a year old, which is fun. So yeah, it was out in November with support for your wallet, some NFTs, and Yieldly at the time. So that was the very, very beginning of things.
Nice. So I think Para was already renamed, right, at that time?
No, it was still the official Algorand wallet.
Okay, so we still had like Algo Signer, my Algo wallet. We had Wallet Connect and the Algorand mobile wallet before it was transferred to the Hippo Labs folks. So yeah, the ecosystem was still pretty early. I actually don't recall if there was a lot of or any aggregators available back in that day.
Well, there's our partners or our fellow aggregators, or some maybe call them the competition. The only one that was around at that time was ASA Stats, who are still around and doing a great job.
Mm-hmm.
Doing a great job. I could be that guy and say, we're better than, but ASA Stats do a great job. They're a different direction from us in the way that they run their projects and stuff. But they were out around about the same time as us. So we've always compared ourselves to what they do. They track more than us. Even now, they do track a lot more stuff than us. But we think that our site looks better, which the user experience and stuff is very important for us. So we think we can nail it on that one, especially with the latest version V3. But yeah, there wasn't that much out there. Oh, and there was Algo Portfolio. Stein, who built that, is now the guy that builds the Mostly Friends quests and everything. He works with Yieldly and does all that stuff. Works with Stitch and makes all the Mostly Friends stuff. So he's a great Web3 developer. I don't know, have you had him on before?
I haven't had him, but I you mentioned ASA Stats. I actually have those folks on the AwesomeAlgo list. I don't have the Algo portfolio. I will add it after the episode, actually. Just check their page. It's pretty interesting, yeah.
Yeah, I think the portfolio tracker is kind of not going anywhere at the minute because he's very busy doing stuff with Mingo and Mostly Friends and all that kind of stuff. But Stein, his Twitter is at Algo Portfolio. He's really, really good. He's a super smart guy. He helped us out in the early days, actually. We had to ask him, how did you do this? Because he had it, and he's like, oh yeah, the Teal 5 pools for Yieldly, when they came out, they were a mess. Oh my God, so difficult to actually, it was really having to go into the actual global state, the local state, combine a lot of data, and it wasn't consistent, so it was very difficult to do. Luckily, I didn't have to do that. Garrett did that. Which is actually one of the most interesting points. Like for when we started Algogator, Paco did the design, Garrett did the coding, and I came in just to do project management, marketing, business side of things. I didn't touch the code until earlier this year. Actually, I didn't actually touch the code. I always say I'm a developer by trade, so we had discussions how technically things should be done, and I did give my piece on design and things like that, but it was ultimately Garrett's choice on much of the early design of the application. V3, the current version, was a lot more me because Garrett took some time off. So I picked up kind of the sole development of the platform in some ways from June this year to rebuild it from V2 to V3.
So in this case, just to recap for our listeners, as you've just heard from Kieran, the early launch dates for the first iteration was November 2021. The main use case for it is, of course, DeFi is just as a lot of ideology coming from Web3 itself. There's a lot of decentralization going on. So if you are an active user of a DeFi ecosystem, you probably are invested or interacting with a large pool of different applications that are not necessarily connected. But the entry point is often your authentication, your wallet, your keys that you're holding with yourself. So aggregation and portfolio trackers are very useful tools because they allow you to essentially tap into that ecosystem and get analytics, get different statistics, and provide a lot of useful functionality on top of you without sacrificing on, being part of one huge blob that is centralized, and everything is controlled from that entry point. It's still an entry point, but it's an entry point into your communication with the decentralized ecosystem. So with that in mind, and given the fact that you're mentioning that there wasn't a lot of competition back in the day, although I do like your comment on how you approach the competition in general, it's a healthy approach, I would say. Competition is not. It's usually a good source of motivation and a good source of innovation in that sense. But what would you say are essentially the key features of Algogator that currently, and not currently, maybe on many stages of iteration of the platform, if you were to break down from V1 to, let's say, V3, what were the main key features at every new iteration, essentially?
Okay.
If I'm an Algo user, right, I have a wallet, let's say I have committed a few things to platforms like Volksfinance or AlgoFi. I hold the several NFTs, right? What would be the main key features in that case that Algogator would allow me to easily access?
Yeah, I'll give you the overall features because the features remained relatively the same, but were added to as time went on and got better as time went on. So current features, as an Algo user, we will give you your net worth aggregated across all DeFi platforms where you've got tokens stored or staked or in LP pools or something like that. So you get a nice figure, which is here's your total net worth in the fiat currency of your choice and also in Algo as well. We also do BTC and ETH. And then we break that down. So we've kind of always taken a view of like a drill down. So we give you that top level, which is here's your total net worth. Then here's your wallet balance, like for the tokens that are actually in your wallet right now, wallet balance. And then your kind of, from that we can see the DeFi difference, like everything else is in DeFi at that point. So we give a breakdown of all the tokens, the current prices, which is brought together we use 3 pricing oracles right now. So we use Tinyman, we use AlgoFi, and Pact for our pricing oracle. And we combine everything together and take the highest amount and show you that price. And then when we get into the actual DeFi, you can drill down further and see, right, for every protocol that you're in, you can see what you have specifically logged into, like what's your net worth for that DeFi protocol. So for my account right now, it would show AlgoFi, it would show Opulus, and a little bit of Tinyman because there's some dust left over that's stuck in some LP pools. We do show those. So you can see that specifically for yourself. And you've also got performance, so you get a graph of performance over time of what your net worth has been since you first logged into our platform. So it's specific to us, it's not for all time. But it's just since you kind of connected with us, we can track it over time and give you a breakdown in a pie chart to see what you've got. Every single DeFi protocol that we integrate gets its own page. So if you want to see AlgoFi, you go to AlgoFi. You can see your net worth, and then the specifics, your total borrowed, your total lending, your utilization. And then we break that down into here's the individual pools that you're in and their value and the APY and all that kind of stuff. So definitely keeping that drill down approach. As someone that has tokens in their wallet, one of the things that we wanted to kind of answer the question on, which you see sometimes, is with new people coming into the ecosystem, is I have Algorand, I have some USDC, maybe they've got some DeFi, that's a popular one, or they've got some Opal, again, also popular. What do we do with it? Type thing. So we came up with a concept which is new for V3 and probably our favorite feature at the moment, which is getting built out further, which is opportunities. So we show you the best APYs you can get for the tokens in your wallet across all of the DeFi that we integrate. So you'll be able to see, for instance, if it's USDC, you'll be able to see the different pools, like LP pools, that you can have across the different main providers. We give you a little breakdown of, pros and cons. there's no lockup period, but there's impermanent loss. If there's any end date for those pools, and we also set a projection for you, which is, as the caveat, doesn't take into account if the token price goes up or down. But it says if you put $1,000 of this token into this pool, here's what you would get back in a week, 3 months, 6 months, and a year. So you can see that in whatever fiat currency you want, and also in Algo. And we link out to the specific page so you can take advantage of that opportunity. We also show like all of them, so you can actually just look at all the opportunities and filter them by platform. So if you're very much, people getting a little bit tribal, and they say, well, I only use AlgoFi. So if you want to see all the opportunities in AlgoFi, you can go see them all. And we also added a couple of new sections for GAlgo. So for liquid governance, what can you do with GAlgo once you get it in a governance period? We thought it was important to say, here's where you could stake it or have LP or whatever. And also, I put in a new section just for stable coins. So for USDC, USDT, and Go USD as well. We've got all the opportunities specific to those, just to give some extra filtering for people. So that's one of our favorite features, and we are working to build that out over time and add more features to that. So that's DeFi, NFT side of things. You can view all the NFTs you have in your wallet. We support all of the myriad of standards: ARC3, ARC69, ARC19, 69/19, 69/3, 3/69. All of those different ones are covered, and you can view your NFTs in a nice grid or in a list. And if you click into them, you can see more information about them, get a nice big image, and you can see the sales data for that particular NFT over time, all the different sales that have been made, the split between royalties and platform fees, so you can see what actually goes to the creators from each of those sales. That data is something that we're still putting all together and getting, I can't think of the word, kind of amalgamating all that sales data so that we can show you, like, for a collection, here's how much the user actually got, or the creator actually got, and here's how much the platforms like Brand Gallery or Algo X NFT, here's how much they got from all the sales, because there was a lot of chat about royalties. That's an aside. If you have any questions, please jump in, because I will just keep going. The NFT side of things, so yeah, we show them all those. That's in your wallet. We also have a tab.
I have some questions on the architecture side, but please go on. Yeah, no, please go on. Actually, okay. I wanted to finish with the coverage, because after that, I just wanted to follow up with some architecture related questions. Just curious how this sounds like a lot of ETLs running.
There's a lot of
for all this data, but yeah, please.
So for NFTs, we got everything in your wallet, but we also show a tab for your creations. So if you're a creator, you'll see all your creations there. We have your listings across Rand Gallery and AlgoX, and also offers between Rand and AlgoX. We've only integrated thoroughly with those two marketplaces so far, but we do have it on the list to get the other ones. NFTs, our platform fully supports NFTs as the Algo name service of choice. So you can log in with a wallet to our platform. So MyAlgo, Pera, Exodus, Wallet Connect. You can log in with that, or you can simply just search for.
Hopefully, MetaMask in a couple of months.
Hopefully, it will be. Yeah, we'll be on that straight away. Absolutely. Hopefully, John Woods has managed to get that part of like AlgoKit or something like that, and it's a nice integration. But yeah, so NFTs you can search with a wallet address or an NFT, and if you do NFTs, you get to see your avatar and stuff like that. And we use NFTs throughout the platform. If there's a place where there would be an address, if there's an NFT available, we'll show that instead with the avatar and a nice little layout that we've put together, just because we really like it. And we do have a section for NFTs for all the ones you hold in your wallet, which will show you all the metadata, and like a nice gallery view for all your NFTs as well. What else have we got? I might actually have to open the site to remember exactly all the features, but I think that's.
I think you
pretty much everything. Oh, we do have a growing list. I think it's 800 to 900 currently of NFT collections that we have indexed, so you can view and search any of those NFT collections. You'll see some stats, their Twitter feeds, their highlights from the collection, your holdings, and also like you can see the full collection if you want, and there will be a tab in there for sales data for the whole period for all of them. But it's just aggregating all that data together takes a little bit of time, and we want to build that out to give some more stats for the creators to see who their holders are and what they do. I think there's a whole big space there that we could take advantage of. But yeah, that's it. And there's some analytics about our platform and stuff, but that's neither here nor there. That's enough, I think, right now.
Awesome. Yeah. Like, to recap for the listeners out there, you could see that there was a very nice coverage of different features in regards to what exactly is meant by the aggregation, and this is not limited to just NFTs, as you can see and hear from here and here. Essentially, there is a lot of integrations with things like NFTs. You have integrations with different DeFi platforms in the ecosystem. You have things like real estate, right? You mentioned the
that's the other one. That's it. Yeah,
Lofty, Lofty AI integration as well, which is a fractionalized investment platform. There is some analytics included, and I believe you guys also provide the documentation on Gitbook where you could get familiar with each and every one of those individual features and essentially learn how to use them better.
Yeah.
Great. I mean, the thing with what you just described is it sounds like you're paying a lot for the storage, right? Like what's
not necessarily.
I'm just curious. Well, right, yeah. I'm sure there could be some interesting scenarios where things like IPFS could be leveraged, right? But if you were to give a higher level sort of architectural overview, and let's say we can pick the very latest iteration, which is V3. If you were to give like a higher level architectural overview of how the platform works, and what would you say are the most heavily utilized layer one features from Algorand?
So, yeah, in terms of our infrastructure, V3 is the most interesting because V1 and 2 were Angular apps, which were just front end. Everything was done front end. Now we have a full kind of stack for ourselves. So we've got backend database in in PostgreSQL. I use MySQL at my day job. That's why it's in my head. PostgreSQL, and then we have a Node.js backend and a React.js front end, and with some gubbins around there. All the UI is built on Tailwind UI, which is
nice,
fantastic. Love that thing. So I think you mentioned about the storage and data and all that kind of stuff. We do hold data for addresses. It's all anonymized anyway, but we do hold data for addresses for your account. We do query the Algorand. We do query the blockchain through indexers. We've recently switched over to using Algo node pretty exclusively. We used to use Algo Explorer, but they kept changing their API, which caused our site to break, which wasn't fun. So we switched over to Algo node. So we use
it's snappier as well, right? It's a fresh node if you compare it.
It's nice and fast, and it's
but not to diss the folks from Rand Labs. I know they're doing some great work on the Go Explorer side, but Algo node, just from loading and things like loading NFTs as well, I just noticed that some of their gateways, they also provide the IPFS gateway for free, right?
They do. They do. We have our own IPFS node, so we've always just done that ourselves, really. We don't hold any NFT images. We wouldn't download those. We just request them at the time. I will go into a thing with that. So the main features of Algorand that we use is really just purely the indexer and some of the Algod stuff, just for doing some low down things. But mainly we're using the API for if someone logs in, for instance, if someone puts their wallet address in or their NFT or connects with a wallet provider, we'll go get their account, just from the normal /address call. We'll then grab from that. We'll have all their assets and such, and the applications that they're connected to, and we'll load up and work out what those assets are. One of the things you have to do is to define between ASA or NFT. I know that they're the same thing, but this world it's.
And are you just looking at the decimal, like floating
You look
points,
at decimals. You look at decimals, but you also look at quantities, and you look at creators, and we amalgamate that with some data that we already have in the back end. So we use that. We bring all that data back, and then for each DeFi protocol, we'll use our own custom integration, which either makes use of their open APIs or their SDKs, which are available. So all of our integrations involve working closely with each of those platforms, because we need to talk to them to find out what they want to do and how we want to do it, and can we do anything special for them, that kind of thing. But our main kind of features with Algorand, and specifically what we use the blockchain for, it's querying against addresses, or in some cases where there aren't great APIs, like Yieldly's an example. With those Teal 5 pools, we have to go to the application global and local states to decipher and work out what they've got. Cometa is also that same case. We haven't got the full integration for Cometa yet, because it's we would have to integrate it with using the application local and global states, but they do have an API, so we're kind of just in a middle ground going, well, you said you might update it, so maybe I'll wait. Because I'd rather use the APIs, because they would necessarily they're not perfect, because obviously if the API goes down or anything, then we're out of luck. Whereas the blockchain will always be there, but we find it to be faster if the people on that side have already sanitized the data for us. Then we'll use that, because one of our main things is we want to provide as much to our users as we can, but we don't want to have to reinvent the wheel every time. So just finished actually off the Folks Finance V2 integration today and tomorrow. And their SDK, and I hope they don't take it the wrong way if they do see this, but their V1 API SDK, was not the best. It was not easy to use. You had to go find the specific escrow addresses and the loan ID. You had to do a lot of groundwork to pull that back. The V2 SDK is much friendlier, and they put some functions in specifically for us to call that would make it easier for us as well. So yeah, architecturally, we had to rebuild the whole platform, going from V2 to V3. We started with a blank slate. That's why it took 6 months. Which was a crazy decision, because we did have a platform that worked that people used, but we did it so that we could take advantage of React components, so that we could have a database in the background, so we could have a back end, so that the front end wasn't chugging along so much, because it allows us to do persistent things, such as the NFTs or your NFT details, or just anything to do with your account. We can persist that, so it's faster to get it back for you. So normally when we fetch data, it's fetch it from the database, show that, then check if it's updated, so that people don't have to stare at a blank screen for too long. Because it's all about a user experience for us at the end of the day. Like I said when I mentioned ASA stats, they track more than us, but I think our user experience is better, because we put a lot more work into that, rather than tracking every single thing in the ecosystem. We will eventually, but it's a slower pace for us, because we've got a lot of other things we want to do.
I mean, it's not a necessarily radical decision to rewrite a stack for a platform if you are in the Web3 space. I think there is certain advantages coming from the usages of a public ledger, and the ledger then can also have some Turing complete computations done for you. So it's basically kind of eases a little bit the amount of dependencies that you have on, let's say, if you have a D app, right? It's in some cases it's easier for people to rewrite it into some completely new stack, rather than simply because there's a lot of dependency on on-chain data and things like that. So I feel like in certain cases it's actually in some domains of blockchain development, it seems to be a rather commonly arising practice where people just, all right, all my data is on chain. I'm just going to pick a different stack, right? I don't have to worry about database in this case. But an interesting, I would say, outcome of things that things in the engineering domain can do when you rely on a big, massive, decentralized public ledger. Are there any interesting? So just to recap, what are the main stateful things that are persisted after a user, let's say, used the platform and logged out? So you mentioned using the indexer and things like that, but are there any specific things that are stateful?
What we actually like in terms of data that we actually hold, we do take note of your address, your NFT, your total, net worth, and the actual data that comes back from the blockchain. We do have most of that saved in our database for easy retrieval. And each of the DeFi platforms, they have an account as well, like an account table. And they're all structured exactly the same, address, NFT, value, like total value, net worth, and then data, just like the data that we pull back from their SDKs in whatever format that comes back in. We do try and standardize that a little bit, so it's a little easier on the front end, but in some cases it's a little bit different, a little bit difficult. On assets and NFTs, we do, if you log in with a wallet with an asset that we haven't seen before, because we have a database of assets, you'll see it if you go to the site and go to the front page, you'll see how many assets we currently track. If we do that, then we go to the indexer, get the asset details, we go into the price oracles, we get the price, we put a bunch of data together, and then we save that into the entire asset database. And if it's an NFT, then we add it to our list of NFT assets, just so that we can do background tasks of checking for new sales, checking for collection updates, ARC19 changes, all that kind of stuff. So all that, there's some scheduled tasks that run that do, update to everyone's accounts, check on the balances, make sure that we've got the NFTs correct. Are there any new assets? Do we need to go find those? And like I've said, we're currently polling for sales data at the moment, but it's an ongoing task because people keep buying stuff. I don't think we have maybe a fifth of all the sales data that we want right now. I might have to. We're planning on pulling in some serverless architecture to handle the scheduled tasks, so that we can run them a little bit more frequently, and they're not using our application server, or it's not a server, application app platform. We don't have any VMs. I should make that clear. We use the DigitalOcean, so we have an app platform for the front end and an app platform for the back end, and an instanced PostgreSQL database. So we want to add the serverless functions on top of that, so we can put the scheduled tasks away from the main stuff, because they can.
Nice. Yeah.
It's one of those things that if we wanted to have two containers for resiliency and such for the back end, we'd have to modify the code because they would both try and run the scheduled task at the same time. So, it's such a dumb thing, but we need to move that out to functions. And right now, we have a limited time, so we're having to focus on integrations with folks finance, like I say. If anyone saw yesterday, we've got our announcement that we partnered up with Ultrade. So we'll be bringing a DEX for Algo natively. So we got a lot of other things on our plate at the minute. And I was reminded in our Discord that there was
I saw that announcement. Yeah, congrats on that.
Yeah.
It's like a white label provider of DEXs basically, and then you're going to like have an instance on specific
pretty
for
much.
Algo.
Yeah,
nice.
It's DeFi as a service. So
interesting.
It's a SaaS offering. It'll be branded as Algogator. It'll be the full kind of normal trading DEX that you would get on something like Algo DEX or what used to be Coinbase Pro or things like that, but specific for Algorand. And it's got shared liquidity, so we can do, if we want to, which we probably will, launch our own token. We can do it on that platform, and then we don't have to post up liquidity for it because it's a shared liquidity base across all the different tokens that are in there. And then it would be available on the other partners. versions as well, because like I say, it's all from the same central source, and that would give us a nice, really easy launch mechanism for our own tokens. But that's an aside. That won't be happening for a while. We need to get the thing up and running first, and that'll be coming hopefully early next year. That'll be launched.
But I mean, it's nice to see some interesting implementation of introducing terms like liquidity as a service, or DEX as a service. I wish there was more options like that in the Algorand back in April last year, because a lot of things had to be done from scratch back then. But well, congratulations once again with those announcements. It looks like you guys have a lot of interesting things going on in parallel. Just one final question on the architecture. This is just something I have the platform open in background right now, and I was browsing through it. But I'm curious, how do you handle cases when some particular wallets can have a lot of assets attached, right? I believe the old limit was something around 1,000. Now it's even higher, I believe. Do you provide some sort of pagination or like batching when you load it, or you actually have some sort of longer lasting animation in this case, and then after everything is indexed, you sort of allow the user to use the platform, or it's more like reactive and you get a stream of whatever is indexed at batched intervals, basically?
It's a tricky one. I mean, I remember going through the 1,000 asset changeover, and people were saying, "Oh, you need to check this" and all that kind of stuff. And it turned out that we didn't need to worry about it at all, because we always had our index calls with the appropriate parameters in them anyway. Because the difference was you had to say you wanted everything. If you didn't, and the old way was if you didn't say you didn't wanted everything, it would give you everything anyway. But now you have to say include all true. We always did, because I'm just kind of like that. So you'll see when you load an account, it has the spinner at the bottom. It says loading search an account. When it says search an account, it's loading your assets, the basic information for you. And it will just load all of the assets. So if you had 10,000 assets, it would load them all. But the actual loading of those assets doesn't take that long, because we'll pull the data from the blockchain, which takes however many milliseconds that takes. And then for each asset that comes back, we do a quick check just to see, is it an NFT? Is it an LP token? They get pushed. And that's all done asynchronously. And then we can bring it back to the front end.
And the images are loaded on the front end side. So
they're just loaded on the front end.
I see. Nice.
So you'll see it'll switch over to loading DeFi. But when it goes to loading DeFi, you can actually use the app at that point, and you should see the assets loaded and things like that. The net worth gets calculated at the end, because unfortunately it needs all the DeFi loaded at the same time. Yeah. We did have a few different back and forths on how we would load all the DeFi, because I mean, I'm going to have to change it in the coming, maybe the next 6 months. If we get 20 integrations, that's us having to do a batch kind of promise all for 20 calls. Now, if they all go at the exact same time, maybe they come back all right, but it's just when those come back, we have to do work in the back end to work out the network. So it's going to end up, I'm going to have to change the architecture. We probably will batch them together. And I would normally do it on the most popular, just because that makes the best user experience. Because we do, one of the funny things about actually having a platform like this is actually we have some really interesting data, which we haven't given it to anyone. Let's be completely clear. Haven't done anything like that at all, but we have it ourselves to see, well, what's the most popular DeFi platform right now that people use? What are people using the most? What are people use the least? And of the people that use this, what else do they have? So you can see there's definitely a space for us to extend the analytics by looking at the trends, and also for the opportunities. We wanted to do something like that to see, if you've got, look at your trading history. Do you always go for LP, or do you stay away from it because of impermanent loss and things you've heard about it? And then maybe we can use that data to say, hey, would you rather try this? Or you like staking rather than LP for single tokens. Have you tried this website? Because you haven't ever used it before. And you might actually quite like it. So it's things like that.
Interesting.
And yeah, but the data in the backend is quite interesting because I only realized that a little while ago that we could actually pull together the stats of who's the most popular DeFi platform based on our relatively small sample size, I will say, because we've still got less than 1,000 wallets registered. But it's one of those things. It's another thing that we can provide to the community to kind of take advantage of that data itself.
Nice. Yeah, and it's certainly a lot of use cases that could be extracted when you have. I guess in some sense it's a first mover advantage as well, right? If you take into the account a set of the competitors at the moment, there's not a lot of aggregators, so it really is a very interesting and a unique glimpse into the actual analytics on the ecosystem. And I'm sure as the pool of users is growing, you will see more and more interesting information coming up in place. Are there any interesting stories, and no need to dive too deep into them, but or perhaps interesting testing methodologies that you guys are using, or like, is there anything in particular that was extremely challenging to implement or test during any of the implementation versions of the Algogator?
The most challenging aspect of the whole piece has always been NFTs, because there's not a standard.
Yeah, there's no standard, or there's too many standards.
Yeah, honestly, I wish people would pick. So yeah, NFTs have always been difficult because you want to be able to show the images quickly, and in most cases you've got a number of them, 100 or so. And in case of collections, you get 3,000 odd. So you need to be able to load them on the fly quickly. One of the problems we have with NFTs is that is the double and, God forbid, the triple hop that we now have, which is ARC3 is get metadata, then go get image URL and decipher that. As I said, we've got our own node with IPFS. So, actual serving the data is fine. Once we know the address, we can get it. But having the URL point to JSON and then the JSON itself have to be read and then get the URL to get the image is the double hop. ARC69, I know that some purists don't like it because it involves a lot of indexer calls to get the metadata because it's in notes and stuff. But the image retrieval, which is the first thing you need to do and the most important thing for NFTs really, is super fast because the URL is the URL that you need to ask for. All we need to do is switch out the IPFS part and put our own URL in there and we're good. So it's a single hop. The worst thing I saw doing V3 was, I think it was, what's the name of that collection? Fugu? I don't know. It's one of the newer ones that came out and everyone's very hyped for it. Lovely art. However, I don't know where they minted them because I need to send them a nasty message, is ARC 19 / ARC 3? No, it's ARC 19, ARC 69. There's a horrible amalgamation that makes me have to do a triple hop to get it. Yeah, because it's supposed to, it's ARC 69 because it's with ARC 19, which is a great piece of technology. Don't get me wrong. It's a very novel approach to what they did, and I think Patrick and the NFT team are super, super smart. I just find it to be over-engineered and very difficult to work with at times because I have to get a URL, determine that it's ARC 19, which is quite easy because it says template at the front of it. And then run that, take that, find out, decipher it. So I get back the reserve address. Go and get the information from the reserve address, decipher that into a URL to then go get the ARC3 data, which is up on IPFS. And then, you've got your normal hop there to get your, and in that case, you would have the URL at that point. We have had instances where the URL then points to more metadata. And then, so it's another hop. And it's just, I just wish people would pick one. ARC3, ARC69, ARC19, pick one and go with that because it'll make our lives a lot easier. But they've done it now. So it's on blockchain, so it lives there forever. So they can't change it. So I guess we're stuck with the standards being all mixed up together. I really like the idea of Arc 30 that Evan at Cesspool had put forward. I don't think it's going to get put through, but it was for an ASA with metadata that would show you the collection asset IDs. So, there could be, you'd mint an ASA with a link to metadata that would say, here's all the asset IDs for this collection. Because right now, and I know that AlgoX do this, and I'm sure Rand do it, but Rand or Rand, they might have some crazy ways in it. It's you have to just work it out. Like, what is a collection? Is it, how do you work out that these NFTs belong to this collection? You're doing it off the name, you're doing it off a numbering, you're doing it off the creator address. There's no exact science to it, and it's quite inefficient. And not, when you actually write this stuff, you think, this isn't good coding. I shouldn't be checking, does it include this? And if it's this, make it this. But you kind of have to sometimes to really find out, is that an NFT that belongs in this collection? So something like that would be nice. I've went off piste again. I tend to do that. Sorry, man.
No.
Just go on tangents about stuff. But NFTs, pick a standard. That's the most difficult thing we had to implement because it kept happening. And then unfortunately, NFTs use NFT avatars in some cases, which then have the exact same problem. And then you add the extra hop that you need to get the NFT first and then work out what it is from that point. So yeah, that's the trickiest part of things. The actual amalgamation of the data. Once you get your head around the SDKs and the APIs, and obviously you're working with code that's been written by a large group of people, SDKs especially, you really have to switch and work out, how does this person write their code? Because there's a lot of different ways. I will shout out Phil at AlumX, or now Deflex as it is, for having the easiest to use SDKs and APIs. Also the guys at Pact, great API. As I said, Folks V1 was difficult. The AlgoFi SDK is strange because it's circular. If you've ever gotten the results and looked at it in the debugger, it's circular. Like a user has a client which has a user, and it keeps going in this loop. I'm sure there's some very good reason for it, but I don't know what it is. I've not seen that. And the Yieldly API that they've got at the minute, you can tell that they had development team changes over time because it's not consistent. So and for us, we like to write one little function, get pools, gets it all back. But Teal 3, Teal 5, distribution pool, different type of pool, this, but they're all different payload formats that come back. And you're like, why? Pick one.
You know what? This is just a bit of topic idea, but I'm listening to your use case, and I feel like there might be something you could get some good benefits from. I had this guy, he's I believe a CFO or something like that, at a New Zealand company called Subquery. Have you heard of them?
Yes. No, I've talked with the folks at Subquery.
What do you think of it? Like, because it feels like in the case if you are going to grow to 20, 30 different integrations, it might be easier to have a custom indexer that is tailored for your request rather than trying to figure out those things manually.
Yeah,
I know for DeFi there's a lot of integration that can sometimes happen only through SDK or only through the framework of sorts, but for cases when there's data coming from the indexer or NFT, anything from chain, it feels like Subquery could actually simplify some of the aspects of querying for.
Yeah, one of the things we are still looking to do, but we put it in the back burner a little bit, is to produce our own API that then other people can use.
That would be really helpful, yeah.
And for that, we were going to have access to our data, which is formatted in the way we like, but also put an abstraction layer on top of Subquery, so that people can make deep blockchain queries and have our data come into it and also Subquery data come into it. So maybe they ask for, sales data for an NFT collection, or holder information, where holders that have this collection, who also hold this ASA, who do this, show me all those people. So we could use some of our data, but also subquery to go get that. It's on the list of that's my most common use phrase. It's on the list of things that we want to do. So we think that would be really interesting for people to be able to use in the future. I've used subquery a little bit. I was going through some of the tutorials. I found it a bit inconsistent in its way that it works. Because on Windows, didn't work. On Mac, worked. It's like I hate when things do that, because I've got, I use both for different situations, but it's definitely on the cards. I think subquery is really cool. Not just because it's the graph query, but just what you end up at the end with having things on their cloud and hooked into their stuff, and so it's set up for you. So it's definitely on the cards, but we were thinking about doing it at the start of 2023, but it'll probably be pushed out to the summer at the earliest. But it's definitely something I still want to do.
And to proceed with that, I guess let's move on to some of the questions that are going to wrap up the topic of Algregator, and I think this is an interesting one that is also going to answer a question from the community on the ask.awesomealgo.com. So what's the future roadmap looks like for the Algregator? What are you most excited about for 2023? And one additional question from my side, are you considering any expansion towards perhaps creating some sort of open source general integration platform where people could come in and, let's say, write adapters for some new DeFi platforms? That is open source, and you could leverage, community members actually adding their own custom, let's say, parsers or some custom ETLs that Algregator can then incorporate. Because just maybe a bias from my side, but I feel like sometimes there's really a lot of benefits from open sourcing and gaining some people from the community to contribute.
Yeah, I'll take the first one. I'll take the last one first. There wasn't initial plans, but it does actually sound like a nice way to do it, because, like I say, everyone on the team has day jobs. We all work part time. I've got kids, so time is limited.
Yeah.
We don't have any funding at the minute, so this is all of our own back. Maybe we would open it up. I have nothing against open source. I like open source stuff. So I mean, if we were going to open source it, the whole code base would be open source. If we were going to do it, just do the whole hog. Getting community members to come in and write the adapters and such, I think it's an interesting concept, and honestly, I will think about it.
Well, it has to be incentivized, of course, right? You wouldn't see a large pool of people unless it's like people from the DeFi platforms that are interested in it. But
I think that's what the team at ASA Stats have done. So they're more of a collective. There's the main guy. I can't pronounce the username he has. There's the main guy who, in my opinion, runs the place with an iron fist. It's a bit of a dictator when it comes to it. There's very specific rules if you want to work with ASA Stats and work on ASA Stats, which has got them where they want to be, and that's fair, and they can do what they like. But that they went down that route, which opens the door to being a DAO, which adds tokenization for a DAO, and then it adds in a whole lot of work that I genuinely am not that interested in. I don't think the world is ready for DAOs to really work. I don't think the technology is really there to make them work well enough. And that's infrastructure related, and also just in terms of people. I don't think people have the mindset to make DAOs work properly.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't go down that route. Would we expand the team? Yeah, we would. But that would be official capacity, like full-time. Well, say full-time. Full members of the team to come on board and share in all the stuff for it, rather than the kind of open source approach. Again, nothing against open source. I just don't think it's for us. in that way of getting other contributors. We might give people the code, but I don't know if we would want contributors because, as I say, it opens up a whole lot of other stuff that we'd have to manage and deal with. On the other point, what's on the roadmap? So a lot of stuff coming in the very near future. Like I said, Folks V2, hopefully this weekend. That'll finish us and have most of the big players integrated at least to a level, which will be a nice milestone for us. Then we've got Ultrade, so we'll get dex.aggregator.finance or some other subdomain, but it'll likely be that coming in early, either January, February kind of time. There will be tokenization happening next year. And how we do that, the actual mechanism, if that's an IDO or if it's just through Ultrade or some other mechanism, we will see. We've always talked about tokenization being attention token based or like a reward system. So we're very big fans of Brave and what they've done with their reward token. So we wanted to kind of take that and I mean, everything we want to do comes back to users because we need to up the user count on our platform to build it out more. It gives us more opportunities in the future. So having a reward system that when you use our application, you get something back seems like a no-brainer. We will finally get our DFlex powered routed swaps in. We're working on that a little while. We had to redo the UI and I had to take and jump on some other stuff rather than finish that off. So we will be having DFlex and Ultrade together. Ultrade will be for the serious traders that like that big trading interface, and that'll be on its own subdomain. The DFlex stuff will be in the app in its own little submenu for swaps. We won't put their limit orders and stuff, and it'll just be the nice simple swaps for people like me that don't really like the full trading interface. I honestly don't care that much. I've only set limit orders so that I can integrate the stuff. More integrations coming. Hopefully comment us soon. Your cables finance, Algo seller, a number of other things coming along. But I think the big things, like I talked about, API, we're just going to make sure we get the use case right for that. Like who actually needs this and what data do they need? We want to do membership cards for Algogator to give people some more premium features on the site. That's something that will be coming soon, hopefully in the new year. It's also a revenue source for us because we need to pay for servers. So that's a nice way for us to be able to do that and people get something out of it. And then down the line, we want to expand the opportunities piece to, like I may have mentioned, look at your history, look at who you are, what's your risk profile, and serve you up stuff that we think you'll want. And then one of the ultimate aims with the opportunities is instead of having a link to AlgoFi, is to, and you can do this with AlgoFi because their SDK is very good, actually just be able to sign the contract, sign the transactions there and then on our site to take advantage of that opportunity. That's that kind of composability that we want, which a lot of the APIs and SDKs do give, but it's one of those things that we're putting down the line a little bit because it's very interesting, but it takes a lot of time for us to integrate that kind of functionality because it's not our wheelhouse right now. I would say I am a reluctant and new Web 2 dev, right? Web 3, I'm still pretty inexperienced. Garrett has been doing blockchain and specifically Algorand for quite a while now, so he's the guy that's why I handed the swap stuff off to him. But we're getting
maybe we can have the next episode sometime next year with Garrett as well to cover new additions to the platform. But
yeah, I think that would be good. But lots of stuff coming down the pipeline. But I think definitely improving opportunities, the API, and possibly opening things up to sister applications that live in the same ecosystem using the same tokenization model as well.
And so to proceed, I'm going to ask the top question that got the most votes. And after that, we can proceed to the final question of the episode, where I would ask the traditional advice for software engineers, basically. All right, so I don't know who submitted it. I think this was someone from Reddit, actually. You could see the block and transaction where he submitted the question, but he's asking essentially, what TPS level by end of 2023 do you think would signify a healthy growth rate on the Algorand blockchain?
I mean, increasing transaction count is one of the things that I know that Garrett's very keen on. So what can we do with these transactions? What are we at just now? We're like 13, 10, 13, something like that on average. I can't remember exactly what it is. I know that the TPS ceiling is 6K, but realistically, on average, what are we doing? I think it's like between 10 and 13. I think if we got an average up to something like 50 to 100, I think would be good, because a lot of those, it's one thing I would say, a lot of those transactions, see if you look at blocks on AlgoScan, which is a great block explorer that's new. If you look at AlgoScan and you look at every block, nearly every block has a transaction for planets, for Planet Watch. Now, it would be super interesting, and probably something you could do with subquery, is say, what would our TPS average be without Planet Watch? I think quite a lot of the transactions come from them, and that's just this stuff from their sensors going back and forth, which is genuine. They're genuine transactions, but I just don't know how much of the TPS is held up with Planet Watch. And honestly, I think TPS user adoption, great. I think if you got to 50 or 100 TPS on average, that would be grand. We're still very early, like I said at the beginning. I don't think we're going to hit the limits of the blockchain. I don't think we ever want to. If we were getting to, 5999, I think it'd be great. But then you have to think, what are those transactions? I think we're going to need a lot more dApps and a lot more things going on in the chain to actually get anywhere close to that. And while I think it's an indicator of usage, again, how useful are those transactions, really?
Yeah.
I don't think they give a clear picture. And same thing with like number of wallets. I know there's like 35 million wallets or something. It's like, well, every time you do X, you get a new wallet, or how many of those are testing wallets? How many of those are actually in use? That kind of thing. I don't know how you properly gauge it, but I think active wallets and active users and things like that would probably be the most interesting thing to look at if you want to kind of gauge for the ecosystem. So for TPS, 50 to 100, I would say would be fine, but I don't think it's a great gauge.
Yeah. I think it's a rather tricky question, because the real picture is way more complicated, right? There's so many factors that play into increasing that TPS factor. But just from the metrics perspective, then I guess that's a good healthy estimate to assume that if we get by 40, 50, then probably there's a lot more adoption, basically. And let's see what happens with AlgoKit. I'm pretty excited to see what John and the team are going to do with that.
Yeah.
All right. So, Kieran, it's been an amazing dive into AlgoGator. Let's move on to the final part of the podcast. So basically, I keep asking this to every guest I have. So, do you have any advice for software engineers who are interested in working in Web3 space, or working with blockchain development in general, and trying to get their feet into it? What?
Yeah, I think for Web3 and blockchain, I think one of the most important and the best things about it is the communities, because it's a niche technology. Let's be fair. It's a very good technology, and there's a lot of money behind it, but I would still call it a niche or a specialized technology currently, not mainstream. The communities and the culture have that kind of underground kind of feel to them, especially like you've got your NFT communities and stuff like that, and also the DeFi communities and the people that want to be there. It is quite tribal and it is quite underground, but it's quite close knit. So you will often get, if you want to get into it, start talking to people, because people will want to talk to you, and they will want to give you advice. I thought about when we did the V3 launch of putting out a couple of tweets that said thanks to all the people that helped make this happen. And I couldn't think of them all because there was going to be too many. I would have just had to like dump my entire like friends followers list onto Twitter because there's so many people that helped make that happen. So that's my main advice: is talk to people, get involved in communities, pick projects that you like, and don't have the FOMO. And if something looks too good to be true, it is. Everyone remembers Annie Rand. Um, Good times. Me and Garrett were the ones that called that out. We're like, that's a scam. That has to be a scam. I was telling people that were like, going for it, like, no, 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 I've talked to them. They're really good guys. They're really good. And I was like, it's a scam. It's so obviously a scam. I know, but for things like that,
I think you guys need to launch a side project called Algo Sheriff that will be like a decentralized oracle into scams in the ecosystem.
It's going to be me looking at projects going, it's not good. It's not good, mate. Not
and
good.
then persisting it on some global state and some contract just for fun.
Yeah. I will put. We talked about Sister Act. I think I'll put that one on the list. But I mean, with Annie Rand, I had to just give it the old. Well, good work. I mean, I know a lot of people lost a lot of money and stuff, and that is terrible. But I do like when stuff like that happens. It does show that people need to wisen up a little bit, and not throw thousands of dollars at nothing.
Yeah.
Objectively nothing. But back on the actual question, yeah, talk to people, get involved, and do what you want to do rather than what other people think you should do, which I think is quite the same for all software development because, a lot of stuff goes into DeFi staking projects, that kind of stuff, or the way that things are done in blockchain specifically, like swap interfaces. We made our swap interface completely different than what people normally, with like the two boxes and you pick a token and or with Vestige and stuff. Great team, fantastic product. Very complicated. It's super complex. There's so many numbers. So we made it a little bit different. I think going against the grain does work, but yeah, there's always people out there to help, and most people in it's funny, and most people in blockchain, because even though there's so much money behind it, billions of dollars here and billions of dollars there, a lot of people will give you their time for free, which is so strange because in software development, that's not normally the case, but it's because of the community aspect. And just be open minded, I think.
And just, I guess, a lot of people also get excited for getting into an industry that is still pretty much expanding and growing and developing in front of your eyes. I think that's also part of like, if someone told you, imagine if, I don't know, like folks from Next Step were actually working on core frameworks. You dealt with iOS, so I suppose you may be familiar with like things like core animation library and things like that. Imagine if this was open source tech and you had an opportunity to see this being developed real time in front of you and communicate with those folks behind it, because it's one of those like cornerstones for entire Apple ecosystem. They still do rely a lot on that, even though it's in Swift now. But like the core libraries that were written, I think this was just to provide as an example. Yeah, it's certainly one of those things that also I think attract enthusiasts in the space. But with that, Kieran, I think this has been a wonderful episode. We did cover a lot. I'm excited to see, how the future roadmap is going to roll out for you. All the best with that white label marketplace that you mentioned. Hopefully that is going to reduce a lot of, at least the aspect of not implementing it yourself are going to simplify some some work for you. But overall, thanks for coming to the episode and being an amazing guest. And what do you think of the voting?
I really like it. It was really, really cool. I was like, oh, I did vote for one of the questions. But not the one that won. One of the other ones that had like 0 votes or something like that, just to see how it worked. It's really, really good. If you want the implementation, like the My Algo implementation and stuff, give us a shout. We can pass over some code to put that in.
Oh, sure. Yeah, it's I just wanted to simplify some stuff with the wallet.
Yeah, no, I actually I always found my algo to be so much simpler than Pera. I won't go into it, but I've had a lot of problems trying to get Pera to work for swap transactions.
I actually had the PR to fix a little bug in their example.
Did they tell you that it was going to be fixed in the next version?
Yes, but I think fixing examples is actually not something that requires a lot of reviews. So it went through. Yeah. It was just a tiny bug, but yeah, I would say my algo on the integration side is easier. But Pera, I'd say the very latest versions, when they added the ability to jump back into the app after you logged in, I think with that iteration, it's relatively.
We haven't actually put in the very latest version yet, because I know that they updated it and they've made a lot of updates and changes. That's on the list, as they say. So I put that on Garrett's list. He can deal with that. He doesn't know that yet.
It's just a bump in version. Like there's no breaking changes, I think. So hopefully.
But yeah, no, it's great. Thank you very much for having me on and let me waffle on about Algogator and features and such, and say lots of stuff. So no, I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kieran. And to the listeners out there, you can check out the platform that we've been talking about today at algogator.finance. And the references to that are also included on the AwesomeAlgo website. So thank you for listening and have a great day.